Hello, my awesome secondary math 2 class. If you were in my class last year, at the end of last year, when all of this craziness started, then this format is going to look familiar to you, okay? So basically, today is going to be the first day that we're actually kind of getting into the swing of how class is going to work, okay? So we should have all done our starter already on Canvas. If you didn't, make sure you do that and submit it. And then we will get into our notes, okay? So this paper that I have right in front of me is our notes, okay? You will not turn this paper in physically or on Canvas, okay? So let me explain. If you are physically in my class today, and it's going to be a little weird because we are going to be watching these videos of me instructing, doing the notes, but I'll also be in the room, right? Because it's super annoying to try and teach in a mask. So this way I can help you guys as I'm going over the notes myself, but then if you are taking this class online, if you're at home right now, you are also able to watch me fill out the notes, and that will help you do your assignment, okay? So let me explain how these notes are going to work. So every day they will be available for you to pick up if you are here at school, physically at school. You will have a copy of the notes like this to fill out as we are watching these videos, as we are watching me instruct, okay? So you will not physically turn in these notes, but at the end of class or at the end of notes, I will be coming around to check, just a simple check and see if you are actually filling these out, okay? These will go into Skyward as a participation grade if you are physically coming to school. If you are accessing this stuff online, you are at home, then this will be waived. The notes will already be filled out for you to access on Canvas. But again, if you are physically here in school, this will be required. It will go into Skyward as a participation grade, okay? So with that, we will go over our notes. I'll do the examples as we're watching this video because I will physically be in the classroom with you. We will pause it. I will explain things a little more and we'll answer questions, okay? But for now, let's get into our notes. So let's look at number 1. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so number 1, it's asking us to define the following exponent rule. Okay, our first exponent rule, and we talked about these at the beginning of last year, so hopefully you kind of remember, but no worries if we're trying to brush up a little bit. Okay, so our first rule is going to be our product rule. So let's define this. It isn't going to look like an English definition where it's kind of a sentence. It's going to look like a math expression, okay? But before we do that, let's actually go over what is exponents, right? So over here, I'm going to define what are exponents. Okay, well, exponents, that just means repeated multiplication. Okay, anything that I write on the notes, you should also be writing. Okay, so over here, exponents, the definition of exponents, that's just repeated multiplication. Okay, so let's say you have, let's take a number. Okay, let's say 2, right? 2, and it's going to multiply by itself, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, repeated multiplication. Well, how we would write this in exponential form would be 2 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th power. So 2 is then our base to the 5th power. Okay, and those 2 words that I used right there, let's actually label those as well. Okay, so our 2 in this case, what is being multiplied repeatedly is our base. Okay, our 5, the little number attached to that 2, is then our exponent. Okay, so we're going to have to know those. Okay, so we have our base, which is 2. That's what's being multiplied repeatedly. And then our 5, the little 5, that's our exponent. So 2 to the 5th power. Okay, So now let's actually define one of our exponent rules, and that's product rule. So product rule is where the exponents, the bases, are being multiplied. Okay, so exponents or bases are being multiplied. So it's basically going to look like, let's say we have x to the second power. Okay, it's going to be multiplied, right? Because product means multiply. It's going to be multiplied by another x to the something power. We'll just say it's x cubed or x to the third power. Okay, so what this means and what you might remember from last year is that when we're doing the product rule, you actually want to think that you are adding your exponents. Okay, so whenever you think product rule, think add your exponents. And let me show you why. Okay, so if we take these two terms, these two exponents, and we expand them, we put them into expanded form. When we say expand, almost think of it like a rubber band. Okay, right now it's x squared. We're gonna stretch it out. So x squared actually turns into x times x, right? 2 x's. Okay, so now it's being multiplied by our second term, which is x cubed, or x to the third power. And we would expand that by writing 1, 2, 3 x's. Okay, well now we could say that x is our base, right? But how many x's are there? What is x to the power of? So now you could just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. X is to the power of 5. And guess what? That is the exact same thing as up here as 2 plus 3. X to the 5th power. Okay, so whenever you think product rule, you are going to add the exponents. That is what we're doing when we're talking about product rule. Okay, and before we get into our examples, we need to come over here and let's write our steps for actually solving these. Okay, so we know that we have to add our exponents, but the first step I want you guys to write down, and you might remember it from last year, is going to be multiply the coefficients. Okay, hopefully you guys kind of remember that word, multiply coefficients. Okay, our second one is going to be add the exponents. Okay, put a pause on coefficients right now. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right now, we're really just going to focus on adding those exponents. So let's look at number 2. Okay, so I'll zoom in just a little bit more. So we have number 2 right here. So what is our base? First of all, let's label what we know or what we need to know. So what is our base? If you're having troubles figuring out what your base is, remember, look up here. What did we label as our base up there? What's that example? So what is our base going to be in number 2? The base is what's being multiplied repeatedly, or the big number that's attached to the exponent. What is that? What is attached to that exponent? Okay, I might pause the video right here in class. Somebody answer me, what is my base? What do you think? Okay, fantastic. Our base is going to be 4. Okay, right? Those are those 2 big 4s right there. Okay, and what are our exponents now? Okay, so exponents, right? What are the little numbers that are attached to our base? Sorry, I just kicked the table. What are those little numbers? We have a 4 and a 4. Okay, notice I only wrote 1 4 for our base, right? As long as our bases are the same, that's okay. You only have to write one of them. Since they're both 4, then we only have to write 4 once. Exponents, I want to write that there's a 4 there and a 4 there. There's a lot of 4s in this problem. That's okay. Okay, so now we have our base that's being multiplied. So we know that our base is going to be 4, right? It's the same base, so our base is not going to change. You can just write that our base is 4. But now, what is our exponent going to be? So we don't have any really coefficients here, so we can just go to add the exponents. Okay, so let's go back here. So we have our base is 4, but now let's do our exponents. So our first exponent was 4, and we're going to add our second exponent. which is 4. Okay, what do we get for our answer? Okay, I might pause the video. Somebody answer me, what is 4 going to be to the power 2? Awesome, we know that 4 is to the power of 8. 4 plus 4 equals 8. Beautiful. Okay, let's do number 3 really quick. So again, we're not really dealing with coefficients because we'll talk about that in a second. We just have a base and we have exponents. Okay, so somebody tell me, what is my base? Okay, our base is that big number that the exponent is attached to. So our base right here is 2, right? They're both 2, so we only have to write one of them. And then what is are our exponents? Okay, we have a 3 right there, and we have a 4 right there. Okay, so now we would look at our steps and say we don't really have any coefficients, so skip step number 1, go to step number 2. Okay, we know that our base is 2, so that's going to be our big number that the exponent is attached to. And then we have adding our exponents. Okay, so we had a 3 plus 4. Okay, somebody tell me, what is the answer to this one going to be? What is this simplified exponent? Beautiful, we know our base is 2. I'm going to write it down here. 2 to the power of 7. 3 plus 4 equals 7. 2 to the power of 7. Nice job. Okay, let's look at number 4. So now what we see is different in number 4 from number 2 and 3 is that we're not dealing with really numbers anymore. We still have bases, but now those bases have turned into variables. Okay, we'll define variables more in a little bit, but variables, remember, are the letters, right, A, B, C, whatever, that represent a number. So in this case, a 4 just turned into an R, right? So it's totally fine. We just have variables now. Okay, so on number 4, I actually want to talk about expanding, just like we did up here. I'm going to expand these 2 terms. So I have 2 terms right here. I have an R squared and I have an R cubed. Okay, so first I'm going to expand this. In fact, I'll write right here, we're going to expand. We're going to solve this one or simplify it by expanding it. Okay, so R squared, you can rewrite as R times R, right? R squared, little 2, 2 R's. Beautiful. Okay, it's being multiplied because whenever something is smushed right together, there's no sign in between it. That always means multiplication. So it's being multiplied by now R cubed. Okay, R cubed, R to the 3rd, that means 3 more R's. Beautiful. Okay, now all we got to do to solve this, figure out what is R, what is our base to the power 2? We just count it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our answer is going to be R to the 5th. Okay, and let's say you just wanted to go over here and do this add the exponent step. You would have known that R is our base, right? And then you could have said 2 plus 3. Guess what? Same thing. R to the 2 plus 3 is R to the 5th. Awesome. So now I'm just curious, and I will be when we're actually having this class. Which way do you prefer? Do you like adding the exponents, or do you prefer expanding it out so that you can see how many of your base there are? Okay, let's talk about that really quick. So I'll pause. Okay, beautiful. Let's look at number 5. Okay, number 5 is where this multiply coefficients is really going to come into play. Okay, so number 5, we're going to multiply some coefficients here. So what is a coefficient? In fact, let's define that right here. Coefficient is the number that's right in front of the variable So that means it's being multiplied. The number being multiplied to the variable, meaning it's the number right in front of the variable or the letter. Okay, so right here I can see that there are actually 3 coefficients here, 3 numbers that are right in front of these variables, these x's. So I have 2, a 2, and a 3. Okay, those are my coefficients. So this is where I actually do want to do step number 1 first. Okay, so we're going to multiply these coefficients. What is 2 times 2 times 3? Okay, somebody tell me, what is 2 times 2 times 3? Beautiful. Okay, we have 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 times 3, which is 12. Nice job. Okay, so we have a 12, and we're just going to set that aside for now. Okay, so we have our 12, but now let's do our second step, which is add the exponents. Okay, look at our base. What is our base in number 5? Our base is going to be this x. Okay, it's what our exponents are always attached to, right? The 3 is attached to the x, 3 is attached to the x, and then there's that invisible, if you guys remember from last year, what is that creepy number that's always really there in math? It's 1. So that 1 is also attached to the x. Okay, so now we have our base, which is x, and we would add our exponents, right? We multiplied the coefficients already, now we're gonna add the exponents. So we have x to the first power plus to the third power plus another third power. Okay, so now all we got to do, what is 1 plus 3? Let's take it in chunks. Okay, let's take the first 2. What is 1 plus 3? That's 4. Beautiful. And what is 4 plus 3? That is 7. Beautiful. Okay, we found both of our pieces that we need to write our complete answer. Okay, I'm going to write it right here. So our simplified expression is 12x to the 7th. 12x to the 7th. Okay, we did both steps. We multiplied our coefficients, 2 times 2 times 3 to get 12. And we added our exponents, 1 plus 3 to get 7 attached to that x, right? 12x to the 7th. Great job. Okay, let's look at number 6. Okay, number 6 is now different from numbers 4 and 5 because I have different variables now. Okay, in 4, I was only dealing with r's. In 5, I was only dealing with x's. Okay, but in 6, I now have an x, I have a few x's, a few y's, a few more x's, and a few more y's, right? I have 2 different variable bases that I'm dealing with. Okay, so let's label that. So what bases do I have? Right now we're gonna label the bases and the coefficients. Exponents are pretty easy to see, so we're not gonna label those. Base and coefficient. Okay, so our bases, remember base is what the exponent is attached to. Okay, so look, where can you find the exponents? Okay, so I see that the exponent, there's an exponent right there, right there, right there, and right there. Okay, notice how I left the 4 and the 2 out. They are not attached to the exponents. Those are our coefficients. We'll save those for just a minute. Okay, but what are our bases? So I have an x, those 2 x's, and I also have a y. So I have 2 bases in this one. Okay, now somebody tell me, what are my coefficients? What are the numbers that are in front of my variables? What are the numbers that are in front of those letters? Great job. I see a 4 is in front of that x, a 2 is in front of that other x, so I have 4 and 2 for my coefficients. Okay, well, awesome. Let's go over here. Let's do our step 1 because we know what our coefficients are, right? We just found our coefficients. They're 4 and 2. So the first step, I'm going to multiply 4 times 2. Okay, what's that going to give me? Okay, I have 8. Great job. So we're going to just save that 8 for a second. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm going to write a rule right here that's super important. It's okay if we go into 7, we might not even do 7. So you can only add exponents with the same base. Meaning if they don't have the same base, you cannot add those exponents. Okay, so let's look over here. Which base do we want to look at first? X or Y? Okay, you might have chosen something differently, but let's just look at X first. So we have X cubed right there, and then an X fourth right there. Okay, so these two I can add because they're the same base. They're both X's. So what do I get? What is X cubed plus X to the 4th? Or what is 3 plus 4? Okay, that's going to give me X to the 7th. Great job. Okay, now let's look at our other base. So we have another one, right? So let's look at our Y's. So I see a Y cubed right there, and then a Y. I did it right. Don't worry. Thought for a second I switched the X and the Y's. That's okay. So I see a Y cubed right there, and then a Y squared right there. And we're gonna do the same thing. Since they have the same base, since they're both Y's, I can say what is 3 plus 2? Okay, that's going to give me Y to the 3 plus 2 is 5. Now we have all of our pieces to then write our final answer, right? We found our coefficients and we found our two bases with their exponents. So our final answer, always put your coefficient out front, which is 8, X to the 7th, and Y to the 5th. Final simplified answer. Beautiful, guys. Okay, I'll probably, once we're in class, take this opportunity to pause the video. We can probably do a couple more examples up on the board, but for the video's sake, let's keep going. Okay, so our next rule we're going to talk about is our quotient rule. So what operation is attached to quotient? What does that mean? Just like up here, product means we are multiplying, right? Well, what does it mean when we're saying quotient? What does that mean in math terms? Divide. Okay? So this rule, we're seeing that things are being divided. Okay, we see that fraction, that always means divide. Okay, so we are going to, just like we did, defining it up here, let's define it down here. So let's say, for example, we have X to the 4th, okay, divided by another exponent, X to the 2nd, X squared. Okay, well now what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to expand them, okay? Expand, just like we did under product rule. Expand these two exponents. How we're gonna do that? X to the 4th turns into X times X times X times X, right? X 4 times. Okay, now on bottom, expand X squared. That's 2 X's. Okay, and if anybody can remember what our next step is, then please raise your hand now and we'll pause the video to see if you are right. Okay, so here's what happens. In math, whenever you have things that are being divided and there's the same thing on top and bottom, guess what happens? They cancel out. Okay, so we can take that X is on top and bottom, that X is on top and bottom. They cancel out. Okay, but now what does this turn into? What do I have on top? How many X's do I have left on top? 1, 2. 2 of them didn't get canceled out. What do I have left on bottom? Okay, if you said 0, remember that there's always an invisible number that's being multiplied. Okay, and that is 1. Remember that 1 is always that creepy number. Okay, well, whenever we have a 1 on bottom, do you guys remember, do we have to write that? Does it change? No. Whenever you have just a 1 on bottom of a fraction, you can just rewrite x squared, whatever's on top. And that is our simplified answer. Okay, so with quotient rule, just like in product rule, whenever you see product rule, you're thinking add the exponents. Okay, quotient rule is kind of cool. You're going to think two things here. You can think cancel or subtract. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean by that. What is, so let's say we want to go into subtraction more. X to the 4th on top minus x squared on bottom. What is x to the 4 minus 2? What is 4 minus 2? It's 2, right? And we got x squared. Okay, so with quotient rule, you're either thinking cancel them out, which is the same thing really as subtract. I personally like canceling out better. I can see it. I see that there's 2 left on top. There's 1 left on bottom, which really just means x squared. Okay, let's do a couple examples. So up here, we're going to expand it just like we did defining it. So on number 9, I see that I only have 1 3 on top. Okay, I'm just going to write 1 3 on top. Okay, on bottom, how many 3s do we have? 3 times 3. Okay, now you can say whatever's on top and bottom can cancel out. Oh, they can cancel out. Okay, what is left on top? If you don't see anything, remember, hint, it's that creepy number that's always being multiplied. Beautiful, so we have a 1 left on top actually. What is left on bottom? Just 1 3. Okay, what happens when my 1 is on top? Can I just not write it? Nope. Okay, so 1/3, this is super important, I want you to write this down, does not equal 3 over 1, right? Do you want 1/3 of a donut or do you want 3 donuts? Right, you probably want 3 donuts. Those things are not the same. So if the 1 is ever on top, if you have a 1 left on top, you have to keep it there. 1 stays there. So our final simplified answer is 1/3, 1 over 3. Okay, awesome. Let's skip number 10. Number 10 is just like number 9. So let's go down to number 11. Okay, number 11. So we have now coefficients here, okay? But we're gonna start it the exact same way. So I'm going to expand the top. So I have a 2, which is just a coefficient, but it's being multiplied by x how many times? X 3 times. Okay, that's my top that's expanded. Okay, on bottom, I have a 3. I have a 3 that's being multiplied by x 3 more times. Okay, perfect. So now we can say if I have the same things on top and bottom, they can cancel out, right? So what can cancel out? I see an x and an x, another x and an x, and another x and an x. Sweet. Okay, well, what's left? What's left on top? Just that 2. Okay, what's left on bottom? Just that 3. Okay, we weren't left with any variables, and that's totally fine. Okay, if you want to think back to subtract, right? 4 minus 2, 4 minus 2. Well, what is 3 minus 3? That's 0. That means the x's got all gone, right? So now we just have a fraction. Can you simplify 2/3? Nope, we cannot simplify. So that stays 2/3. Beautiful. Okay, let's look at 13. Okay, so 13, we're going to start the exact same way. Okay, expand the top. Okay, so on top I have n cubed, which is n times n times n, 3 times. Okay, on bottom, I have a coefficient of 4, which is just 4 times whatever's after it. Okay, I have m. Ooh, now we're dealing with not just one variable, we're dealing with 2 variables, n and m. No worries. Okay, let's do m squared, which is m times m. Okay, times n squared, which is n times n. Okay, what can cancel? What do you see that's on top and bottom? Okay, there's a top and bottom n right there, and a top and bottom n right there. Okay, those canceled. Okay, now we just say what's left on top. Just one n, or n to the first power, but we really don't have to write that one. Okay, over what's left on bottom, 4 times m times m. So we're going to rewrite that in exponential, since I have 2 m's left, 4m squared. Okay, beautiful, you guys. That is all the notes that we are going to talk about today, because I'm sure we paused. We can explain things a little more. If you have more questions, we can go over more examples. Now you will have your in-class assignment, which will be done all on Canvas. Okay, so again, you are not turning this paper in. You're not turning this in. This is for you to check off. I'm going to check off, for those of you who are in class, that you actually filled out the notes, that you followed along. That will go into Skyward as a participation grade. But then this is going to be super helpful when you're doing your assignment. So I'm sure I'll explain this again in person. But basically, if you didn't follow along and you didn't do your notes, your assignment is going to be really, really hard to do. If you followed along and you did your notes, your assignment is going to be not that hard to do. Okay? Awesome. So fun, you guys. That was our first video lesson. You guys are awesome.